And welcome back, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. And we're continuing our work. We're on section 1 of the bill, which is the BGS section. And we're taking a little bit more testimony on the Pittsford Academy in terms of the proposed $750,000. Page 29 of our book, and it's line 28. And there's $750,000. This is to look at sort of a planning in terms of how we move forward here. And this is to look, I believe, at the West Cottage. And we wanted a little bit more in-depth conversation about what the proposed $750,000 would be used for in the long-term thought and process of some of the buildings at the Academy. So we have with us the Executive Director of the Criminal Justice Council, Heather Simons, and then the Director of the Division of Fire Safety within the Department of Public Safety, Michael DeRosa. I'm not sure which one, Heather or Michael, which one of you will be going first. So I'll leave it up to you. Thank you.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. For the record, Heather Simons, Executive Director of the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. And I believe that the first section, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, that Joe Asia was going to do. Is that right?
That's correct.
Oh, you're starting it off, Joe?
I guess I am.
I guess you are. Come on up. Come on up.
Madam Chair, what line are we?
We are on the spreadsheet. We are on section 1, line 28, the BTS section. And in the book, it's page 29. And then the dollar amount is on page 30. And we took some preliminary testimony from BTS on this, and we wanted to do a little deeper dive to get a better idea of what the plan is for the buildings at the Academy. So Joe, welcome. If you could identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. I'm Joe Aja, the Director for Design and Construction with Buildings and General Services. I also brought along the project manager, Sherman Laughley. She'll be on this project in the future. So I thought, introduce her to this and get her start early in life. Maybe take over for me someday.
We're on 29.
I don't know if I go that far.
I didn't think the same thing either back then.
The years go by and you don't realize it.
Those would be large shoes. I know.
Thank you, Matt.
And, well, I'm not going to go there.
That could be, and it's true. So either way, I'm okay with it.
I wasn't, Joe, you know that.
At the Pittsford Academy, it is the administration building and the West Cottage. They are connected to, it's arcades. They're an enclosed porch, basically. They're non-heated area, cool. And they are a curve as you go from the main building into the east of the West Cottage. This building was constructed 1907 as a sanatorium. Back in 1968, the state has converted that into office space, big classrooms and cafeteria and the likes of that for it is. A&R used to be back in there back in the 80s, and we've had quite a few groups getting out of there. And now it's really the Criminal Justice Training Council, the Fire Justice Training Council, Public Safety uses it. Heather or Mike, please jump in if I'm missing somebody who also uses the facility. But it is used by a lot for the for public safety people who go on either in state public safety and or sheriff's, fire departments, and the likes of that, local police. So what we're looking to do is renovate the existing building, the main building, then the West Cottage, because we haven't done much to it over the years. So this is really about deferred maintenance and catching up with everything. So we do have some places, the original knob and tube wiring. We have the original water service that comes into the building, the original sprinkler system. The fire alarm is new in there relatively to the age of the building. However, it was installed years ago, it has to be updated. There are structural issues. We had a structural report done a number of years ago, we found that the reasons the floors are listing to one side or the other than proper drainage, we found that, over the years, plumbers, electricians, or somebody has hacked out a joist or two, beam, make the areas a little bit larger. So it's like an old home, it's quaint, it has the nice sags to it, the squeaky floors, but we really have to do something about it, and so that we use it for proper uses. So by and large, that's what it is. The West Cottage was tackled.
East Cottage, is it East Cottage? West? But this
East
is,
Cottage was done prior
okay,
for the
yeah.
fire service and completed just last year. And so we are now, the West Cottage had let's call it a makeover 20 years ago, something like that. It did address all the needs. It does have air conditioning, but it's not up to date. It does still have some poor wiring to it, structural issues and the likes of that. So this is to take care of those two items, including with that would be ADA, access, restrooms, and the likes of that. I haven't mentioned anything really about criminal justice, the governance committee, what their needs are down there. They had a study that was done last year's funding. And in that study for the main building in Cottage, there was a recommendation for enhanced space for classrooms, flexible classrooms, and also a cafeteria. And so when BGS undertakes this deferred maintenance project, we will also look at their needs and what came out of that report and incorporate them or try to incorporate them into this project. So if they need, an extra 2 feet in a classroom or something like that, now would be the time to do that. Maybe a little bit more for data wiring for communications, because things have changed in this day and age. That too would be important. So we have not left them out, but that is what we're looking for to do with that. Now, we are in the early planning phases by using the Commissioner's Planning, Reuse, and Contingency Fund to go out and provide a planning study to incorporate all of this to assess really what the cost is going to be. We have done our best guess with the out years and the total cost of this project coming around $24 million. But that is our best guess of what we have to do. We don't know that if that's high or low until we complete our planning study.
Chip,
Did I remember hearing that there's a boiler replacement needed also?
Yes, I can't recall if they're original boilers or not. Back in the late 80s, we converted a boiler, I think that started out that was coal, converted to oil. We converted to wood chips. And we have replaced the other second oil-fired boiler down there 10 plus years ago. So we're no longer burning wood chips down there. So we are looking at, because right now the boiler room is underneath the cafeteria. So it is toasty in there. That's not necessarily a good thing. The chip bin that received the chips, and there's multiple reasons why we don't burn chips down there now. One of them is we would not take a full load of chips, 18-wheeler load. So you really can't get a smaller size. Back in the day when this was installed, there was a local chip distributor or manufacturer, I guess if you will, who chipped along to the local sawmill and could provide that. Part of the problem being was that when you showed up and they couldn't offload, it wasn't that good. It's stuck in a corner, fuel oil tanks right in front of it, so expanding that just was not in the works at the time. Over time, the manufacturer of that wood chip boiler system is no longer in business. So it's different than, say, the one that we have either across the street at the heat plant or even up at the psychiatric hospital. It's a gasification type system. So it was a little bit more dangerous in the fact that because every day you got to rake out the coals, so just like your home wood stove. But because of the gasification process, you had to make sure that was vented first. Or once you opened the door and the oxygen got into it, you could have an explosion. Never had any problems with it or something like that, but that was yet another reason why we didn't do it. The delivery system of the floor. There was something known as a walking floor. They've gotten better over the years, but what it does is you got all the way to your chips, sitting on top of this floor. It slowly moves and drags the chips forward to a conveyor belt. And that design just was not working well all the time. So there are multiple reasons why we got out of the chip business down there. We would like to go back to it. And that would probably be yet another attached building, semi-attached, detached, to handle boiler house, if you will, and also probably something for the HVAC chilled water system.
That's what I was wondering about an addition or an outboard.
Right, and with that addition, that could also incorporate, the needs of another classroom or dining hall or the both, or free up space inside by office space, something like that, something that would work. So we're not discounting the Criminal Justice Training Council at this point in time. Because of that, we want to incorporate their needs because it is the correct time if we're going to do a little bit of work for somebody else to incorporate into this renovation that we're doing.
So would that would be incorporated into this
Yes.
plan? Oh,
And this
okay.
is what the planning study that we're ready to go out to bid with is going to look at.
Okay.
And then
Yep.
sort of provide that guidance as to where to go next and what cost, what we really can and should do. And then this money here is to bring us into design.
So the boiler, is that for the whole facility or is it just for a couple buildings?
It would be for
The one that's
the
there
main
now?
building, the east cottage, the west cottage, the gym's attached, and that's all we would be looking at. However, there is what's known as the doctor's residence. As I know, it's a little bit, as you come up the drive, if you've ever been there, it's the first building on the left. It's an old house, but it was the doctor's residence at the time. You could run a line like the city of Montpelier has run a hot water loop. We could do that and pick that up.
So one thing I'm thinking, because this issue has been going round and round for a long time. I'm wondering if we could bring up with Troy. Yeah, I saw you and I said, that's, if we could bring up on the screen, I think, we have the Justice Council, the Training Council, and we also have the Division of Fire Safety. And this campus, this academy, these buildings are used for both training of our fire and rescue, basically our fire, and our law enforcement. A lot of it is state police. And there has always been a governance issue. There's always been tension between those two entities in terms of the use of this facility, the buildings that are used. Some of the buildings are strictly for the fire division and fire training, and some of the buildings for public safety, and some may be used for both. And we have worked trying to put in place a governance structure. I think that started about 8 years ago, 8 years ago. And we said, we're not going to do any renovations or anything here until we get the governance taken care of. I want to talk about the governance issue, see where we are with that, if there's still conflict. The other thing that's playing into some of this is the Training Council. There's been a lot of legislation over the last 3 or 4 years for training changes within our public safety arena and how that is impacting the council and how they're foreseeing going in the future for this and what impacts that may have on the buildings that are there or the layout. So what I'd like to do, if we can work with Troy to get the Google map and see if we can see the layout, have that projected up on the screen. And I think that might help a little bit because some of the buildings, as you pull into the academy, are at the front as you come in. And then you got to go down the bank, go in the back, and there's some more buildings back there that fire safety uses. So I think visually, I think the committee, it would help if they could see the layout. Do you have that, Troy?
It's coming.
It's going to be.
Okay. And then, of all times, right? Of all times.
I'm,
Good to go.
Okay.
Wayne?
Just, well, we also have some information on the numbers of people in each one of those two divisions?
That will be Heather and Michael. We'll talk about that. And the academy, the police, well, the whole center is named after Bob Wood, who was the chair of this committee and represented Pittsford.
Sounds like traffic.
Yeah, but the internet has got a lot of traffic, obviously.
So Madam Chair, while we're waiting for that, the final piece of that also is the connection to the town wastewater system.
You're
So
gonna,
that is also part of that, because when we did the East Cottage, we did run into an issue with our existing system, and we had to put in a second system just for that. And back in 2001, we did investigate connecting to the town system at that point in time, and it was just deemed too expensive.
then we got into a haggle a little bit and corrected that. And now we're gonna enter into conversations again with the town to see if we can.
You're persistent.
We are persistent.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna try and return. I don't know. I got booted out.
Is there something different than this picture that's in the book, Troy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're
Oh,
gonna.
yeah, you wanna see the campus.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it like here.
You've gotta see the layout of the buildings. And
Try to come in again.
and who's using what buildings, because that's some of the issue, or it was. Technology works great when it works,
Yeah. That's what it was.
and then when it doesn't.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, Michael. Do you have something you want to just weigh in while we're waiting to get the
Sure.
screen? Sure.
Sure,
Just
and
identify yourself for the record, please.
sure. I'm Michael DeRocher, the Executive Director for the Division of Fire Safety, and I chair the Governance Committee, for which your committee was heavily involved in this process. I think we may have lost you.
No, we're here. We can see
Okay.
you and we can hear you.
Okay, so you are correct, Chair. The committee was formed back in 2015, has 8 members. And the purpose of this committee was to deal with, to provide oversight on capital construction, access and use, and to bring all the decision makers and users of the campus together so we could provide a single voice for the legislature on those types of issues. There was a perceived issue on use back in the early 2000s, 2012, 13, 14. Some of it was not necessarily disputes like between the users as much as it was the facility just didn't have adequate infrastructure to support the needs of the users. So I think it's important to, like, it wasn't like kids in the sandbox not getting along. It was, there were other circumstances that I learned being on the governance committee that a lot of this was it related to just the infrastructure could not support the needs of the people there. And so that created some of this tension down there. That kind of stuff has been basically resolved. And Heather and I, we speak continuously down there and have for years. All the users of the facility, I would characterize it as we have excellent communication between the governance committee makeup, and we would like to think that we're on the same page and that we've done a lot of good stuff down there at the facility. So I'm here to kind of paint a picture of the governance committee works. It was definitely needed, and you know, this $750,000, of course, is a BGS request.
Mhm.
And BGS also has a seat on this governance committee with us. So I just wanted to give a little overview of the committee.
That's very, very helpful, and thank you for that. So we know this is in the BGS section of the capital bill, but is this coming from BGS or is it coming from the governance committee?
This is coming from BGS in collaboration with the governance committee. So BGS has been speaking with us regarding this, and as Joe articulated, there will be some discussions as to coordinating some of this stuff on the back end. But and this may be the time too to just let you know that in the future there will possibly be some more capital construction requests coming, originating either from the governance committee or maybe or possibly from public safety. So we'll have to see how that plays out, because you may remember when the governance committee was created, there wasn't a whole lot of language regarding who was responsible for submitting the capital bill request. So Heather and I have kind of beat this back and forth for a while on, sometimes it gets a little cloudy on who submits these capital bill requests. And we've been able to work through that stuff. So no mistake that Heather and I are very committed to seeing this facility down here fixed. And the renovation of the East Cottage was a real catalyst to keep moving these projects forward. We've had great use of the facility, brings a lot of other users to the campus, and it's just been real nice, well received. So I would thank you for that support there as well.
Thank you, Michael. That's very, very helpful. Eric, you had your hand up?
Eric Philcorn, BGS. I just wanted to interject that this is a lot like the courts. We're here for BGS is here for the buildings, and we worry about the wiring, and we worry about the roof, and we worry about the heating. Right. But the programmatic side of it is them. And so we may bring forward things because we see physical plant issues that need to be addressed, and they will bring forward things that have to do with how best to use the buildings for their programs. And then between the two of us,
we're in the middle.
And you're stuck in the middle.
And we're in the middle.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just thought it might help to frame that a little in a similar way. If you're like, well, why are you in front? No, I thought you were in front. Sometimes we walk side by side, sometimes one or the other leads, but we're all trying to move the facility along together.
So Wayne, and then I really want to zoom in and expand this so we can see what the campus or what the area really looks like. And then folks may have a better idea what buildings are used by which entities and how close they are together or how far apart they are. Wayne?
8 members on the committee, one's BGS, who are the other 7?
Michael, did you hear that?
No, I didn't, sorry.
Who are the 8 members of the committees?
We have Heather Seinman, Bill Sorrell.
What agencies?
But he's explaining it.
Okay. Heather Simons is the director of the Vermont Justice Training Council. Then Bill Sorrell. Heather, can you chime in on his position?
Chair.
He's the chair.
He's the chair.
Chair of the council, of the Vermont Criminal Justice Council.
Then we have Chris Corbin. He's the chair of the Fire Service Training Council. We have Mike Skaza, who is the chief of the Vermont Fire Academy. We have Kevin Lane representing the Vermont State Police. We have Alan Cormier representing the Department of Corrections, and myself. And is that it? Did I name 8?
That's 8. Yep.
Yep.
So can we zoom in there, Troy? Start at the beginning. Yes, show where you come in. I would start where you come in, Joe.
Down here, or a little bit almost parallel, is
Seven.
Route 7. So you access the facility through Furnace Road, work your way along here, and then come into the facility. When I mentioned earlier about the doctor's house, it's right here. So if we stay right here, go first, I'll give a quick overview. Doctor's house, main building, east-west cottage. I'll get there.
Oh, okay.
Gym, BGS building, criminal justice training
The dog-
facility.
The dogs,
Oh, I left out the dogs.
dogs and BGS.
Dogs, BGS. Go further out, there's the firing range, then there's the fire service training.
So where's your main road there coming
This
in?
here is the main road.
Okay, so when you come in, you take the first left, not
Come
down
up the
there.
hill,
Yep,
come around the bend, and right off here to your left, still on the hill, is going to be what's known as the doctor's house.
okay.
The green building, I believe, now. I believe public safety uses that for training, but Heather might jump in. I'm not 100% sure on that, if they're still using canine training in there. Then as you continue down the road, you come into a fork that would bring you into really it's the back door now. The front is out front here where
Right.
the monument is.
Right.
That road in years ago to replicate what was there originally. And so when you come into the back, what you're seeing here is this bump out here is where you start having your dining hall and kitchen. So you come in this entrance, this here is known as the main building. Here's the arcades I was talking about, those curved porches.
Mhm.
East cottage, west cottage is down here.
Okay,
And
let's,
this here's the gym.
let's bring up where the West Cottage is here.
There's a
Yeah,
big building.
yep, I got it.
The
There.
large parking area out here is dual purpose. It's not only for parking, but it's also used for their driver training.
So that core building that's there in the East Cottage and the West Cottage, is that just used by the police academy? Or do the fire service folks have any, because those are dorms, some of those are dorms, right?
East Cottage is now dorms after our last renovation, and that is for fire service.
That's for fire service. Do the police academy use those dorms as well?
This is Mike. Those dorms would be available to any of the users. So if the Vermont State Police or the Vermont Academy wanted to use the dorm rooms of the East Cottage, they would certainly be able to do that.
So who determines for scheduling, who goes there when? Who determines that in scheduling?
Right, we have liaison, I'm going to call them liaisons, right? There's Mike Skaza and a couple of his employees at the Fire Academy, and some of, I think they're Heather's employees, I'm not positive, but they meet and talk about this stuff. So they would coordinate the use of that.
So in a year, do you have a percentage, an idea of a percentage, how many times police are using it and how many times fire is using it?
We are tracking it. So we do have that information available. I just don't have it right now. But yes, we do have use of the facility.
So could you send that to Phil Petty for the committee? Because that has been a bone of contention for many, many years in terms of the use of some of these buildings, in terms of, it could be heavily used by one entity versus the other. And that other entity doesn't always have access to the space that they feel they should.
Right. We do a lot of sharing too of our Fire Academy admin building, our training room. There's a lot of users that law enforcement uses our training room down there as well. But Heather could probably chime in maybe on the East Cottage dorm. I'm not sure if there's been a big demand on the law enforcement side for use there yet.
Heather, do you want to weigh in on this? We can't see you any more than you, well, we can see a little square of you, but we're really seeing the picture of the academy. So I don't know, Heather, if you want to weigh in on this or not.
Happy to. I think in terms of scheduling, there's, it's not, so far, in my experience, it hasn't been complicated. We all work very closely together. The fireside, the East Cottage, we haven't used very often, but we can. I think it's used mostly on the weekends by fire, if I understand correctly. We are preparing, though, to increase our capacity, and I can talk more about that when Mike is done in terms of where we, our program plans and how we can use the property more efficiently with all of the legislative mandates. And to be clear, the West Cottage, that's not part of the police academy or the training council or the council. That's, I think the West Cottage is completely VSP. Is that right? Do I have that right? Is there anything else over there, Mike?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yep.
So for the renovations possibly occurring or the upgrades that are needed at the West Cottage, is the thinking that would be used for law enforcement, police? Would that end up being dormitories as well? Is that the thinking? Or we don't know?
At this point, I don't think so, because there is dorm space on the main building on the second and third floors. Years ago, we did renovate the third floor.
Which main building?
Here's the main building. For K-9, the difference between the K-9 rooms and, because they do stay with the officer,
Yeah.
it's just a vinyl floor versus carpet. But they do have that. But I think we're not really looking to change much up with VSP uses. It's about classroom size and the likes of that. So we're not looking at this point in time to convert that to dorms.
So the $750,000 that's before us is really going to focus the bulk on the West Cottage and some on the infrastructure by the cafeteria, the boiler, that type of thing.
The whole main building structurally needs upgrades, electrical, water, and sewer.
And the arcades.
And the arcades are on a closed porch, if you will, that's not heated. I don't know if we're going to look into that or not, but yes, windows, insulation, everything.
So the $750,000 would be a broad overview of what needs to be done. And come back with design documents in terms of the price of going forward if we did X, Y, and Z. It's to determine what we do X, Y, and Z. But BGS is seeing some of these buildings, particularly the West Cottage and some of the campus itself, at a point where if we don't start dealing with some of the infrastructure deferred maintenance, then we're really going to be in trouble if we don't start doing something.
That's correct.
But we don't have a plan in terms of what to do maybe with the West Cottage.
As I said, right now, until we go through the planning phase and somebody says differently, it would be just the way it is. Maybe a wall or two with public safety has to be discussed and addressed of being relocated. But otherwise, it's about water, sewer, electrical. There's an elevator in there.
John?
Right now, does the heating plant heat the two cottages?
Yes, it does.
So the main campus is heated from one central plant,
That is correct.
including the
Yes. Yes.
Chip?
Is this the building that had an issue with the bricks, or was that another building I'm thinking of?
It's water. The bricks that they were falling off.
Yeah, they were.
St. Johnsbury Courthouse.
Courthouse.
That brick's
Yeah.
fall
Oh,
off.
is that what the one? Okay, I'm sorry. The brick buildings all look alike.
Only some was different.
That's all they were.
John?
Does the 750 include an environmental survey?
For sewer and everything? Yes. Stormwater?
No, asbestos and all that good
Oh, yeah,
stuff.
yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
We know, based on our work on prior years in the East Cottage, we know we have both lead paint and asbestos.
Surprise.
And caulking and all that good stuff.
Tristan?
And you might have said this, but are you gonna look at impervious surfaces and stormwater?
Stormwater's under a different thing because of the 3-acre rule, so we're chasing that separately. If we were to do an addition, it would fall under this project unless everything worked concurrently to work that way.
Okay, thank you.
So why don't you go through, the police academy is really in that core building. And then also the public safety department well, that's your West Cottage.
That is the West Cottage, and that is what I heard Heather say was public safety is basically has full use of that, but they do share classroom space and things like that.
Is that being used right now, the West Cottage?
I don't understand there's no classroom space that we use, or that, I don't think there is any classroom space over there.
Is it being used at all?
It is.
It's offices.
Office,
It uses offices for remote
Okay.
safely.
okay. So that's really the core for the police academy in there, this whole main campus. And then the East Cottage is used more for fire safety,
Yes.
but can be used for the police as well. So you gotta figure out
I
this.
think, however the training cycles work, if there's free space for beds, they would share them. There's no sense having empty beds.
And in the main building, are there classrooms in the main building? The police academy, okay.
We're over here in this area.
And then, did I see a hand, Eric?
I'm just
Arm.
thinking about the beds in East
East
Cottage. Is there a fee paid for a night in East Cottage? Is there a charge to the entity that's using it, or is that just
Yes,
pay free? There is like a nominal fee to cover costs,
There-
right?
there is a fee. I think it's like $10 a night or something in those lines, maybe $15 a night. But it's much cheaper than sending all our students down into Rutland to stay in hotels. So all we do is offset the cost of the cleaning of the linen, I think is basically what we're doing there.
So what is to the left of the public safety department there with the long, big roof?
This here,
No, with the big roof, yeah,
that's the gym.
that's the gym.
This is just a classroom and a connector to the main building.
So let's keep going down Academy Road.
Let's do that.
Good luck.
Go north.
Is that what it is, going north?
Be the backseat
Or
driver,
northeast.
Eric.
We're not going down backseat drivers.
I didn't say anything.
I saved you on a red light.
So down Academy Road.
And he was following
Yes, storage, I believe. There's a dog kennel,
This
a
one.
canine unit. So when they're not training, back before that facility was built, they
Yeah.
actually left the dogs in their car. The cars was running because they either, either cooling from the dogs.
Yeah, we built that.
So got a little small kennel for them to go out. They too have their own septic and leach field.
We did that a few years ago for the dogs.
Green roof here, the first green roof you come to is BGS maintenance, an office space that they have down there for the Pittsburgh area. This area here is a training building for criminal justice. I know when I renovated, I don't know exactly how it is used now, but it did have movable walls, so you could go in and do some scenario training. As you continue down the road, you can continue either on Academy Road and or Dorfner Drive. It's a shortcut that's running you through the fire training area. As you come down Dorfner Drive, this slight building here is an indoor firing range. It's basically two trailers back to back. This here building is for the fire service. It's for storage. It's not a non-heated building. I did leave out, the two red shed and the red barn. They, Cheryl Lynn is completed a structural study on them, and they need some work. And maybe better to pull the plug on them, but it's a whole historic preservation issue and all of that.
What's it used for?
Storage,
Storage, BGS storage?
BGS storage. For all the years I've been here, that's just been storage.
Okay.
Yeah, like storage, nothing heavy or anything goes in it, it's just like a, whatever, smaller
Just like a
items that they could put in, like a trimmer or something like that.
Like a spare storage we have at home, or the junk drawer. That everybody has.
Yeah, right. Junk room.
Yeah, junk
Fire
room.
range have, all the air qualities.
No. So across Dorfner Drive here, this brown area here is a firing range for pistols. It is an open range. There are open to the air. There are baffles that are on an angle. However, you still have an issue of where they go down range to their targets. It is open and it does get icy. So the study that was done last year addresses that for putting a roof over it. But the front end of it, the silver area, that is a roof So when you are on the shooting line, you are indoors. Pretty close shed.
Right, but this one down here, no, the one you said in the back.
Oh, that's 2 trailers back to back that you go into. That is an indoor firing range.
So what are they doing for air handling in there for the lead and everything in that one?
I really don't know, but I believe it is all set up for that. That was not something we built in place. It was an actual purchase for a firing range.
Okay, with special buildings.
So we had issues with the outdoor firing range with neighbors quite a while ago, and we had to redesign that and put in, trying to mitigate the sound as well. But basically it was stray.
We did have a stray bullet or
shots.
2 come to find out.
Yeah, but we
Yes.
dealt with that a number of years ago.
We did. We've done, over the years, we've done different types of burns. Originally, this area here, the tree line and across here is a 25-foot plus berm, earthen berm that they're shooting into. But what we did find out, because the different training that the criminal justice does, you're just not shooting at that target at 25 yards constantly, you're doing something different. And then if you had just the right angle, we did find that bullets would leave the range. So we put in a baffle system back in late 80s, 90s. They were just vertical. We were still finding out that at a certain point with ricochets, some could leave the range. So now it's got an angled baffle so that when there is a ricochet, it is now trapping it. And they come in every 2 or 3 years to actually clean out the bullet cut. Pick up all of it.
Where's the property line on the west end?
There's a brook along here somewhere, and that is a property line. The state used to own a lot more land that was sold in the 90s, I think, early 2000s to the town. And down in here, they have a swimming hole. Nice little pond.
And then north, where is that?
North of our property line comes around, and as we scroll up, I could show you roughly where the property line is.
You know the acreage?
I don't know anymore. As you continue on Dorfner Drive and/or circling around the Academy around into Davidson, this here in the late 80s, we created this whole fire training facility. This building here is known as the firehouse. And there are other type setups that the fire service uses for training. They can Mike could talk more about that. This is the fire academy where they have classroom in their admin space. Way back when, I think they were in the doctor's house before this was built, and they new building, and they moved out here.
When was that building done? Wasn't that one done in just about 10 years ago? Is that the one that was done recently? Oh, recently.
Yes, that is the most recent building. I'm not sure the actual vintage, but it's
It's
kind
about
of
10 years old, I think.
Firehouse?
No, the academy building right
The
there.
academy, that was built new.
Of the church.
No. Property line wise, we're running right over here. This here's not our property, and it's an odd lot. It runs up here and then around the road. Up to here, right across here, down through the woods. So here is the firing range, and we did find some lead in some of those people's backyard back in the 80s. So that's why we've enhanced the range over the time.
Hank,
A row of trees that when I built this facility, it was to block the screening for the neighbors. They're cedars, they look like problems.
so Michelle has.
Joe, I'm just wondering if you could give a ballpark idea, like that large undeveloped quadrant on the left, like about how much acreage are we looking at there?
That I don't.
I mean, is it acres or is it?
Oh, yes, it's acreage, yes.
I mean, because I don't think I've ever heard of that as a possible development space when we're looking for places that are hard to place because the neighbors aren't happy with items. I mean, does it seem like it could be a space that we could consider putting some of the state-owned buildings that are hard to site in other locations?
Guns nearby?
Yeah.
With guns nearby?
Septic sewer is not
You said it
out
was-
there
the shooting range was
on
inside.
Plains Road, and I'm not sure how far the water runs out. There probably is water out there because I haven't seen it on the map, but they got a water tank up in here that runs through our property. So you probably get water out there. I'm not sure about three-phase power, and I don't believe the sewer runs out there either. So we'd have to pump that all the way down here to the main facility. And we'd only need to put it on, really connect to the system.
So Joe, where is the burn building? I'm trying to figure
It's in the
where.
middle of the pad there, right?
Oh, it's right there. Okay. Okay.
It's the new burn building.
The new burn building replaced.
The old one's right here,
The old one, where's the old one? I know more of the old
The
one,
burn marks.
right here.
right there. Okay. Okay. Is that old one still being
It's
used?
still used, not for burning, not a smoke burn.
Yeah.
building.
Okay. John?
And just to note that by the firehouse, there's a bunch of white dots. Those are training trailers. And a lot of the fire service is done remote because we're volunteers and on call. So it's just easier to take the training to the stations than it is to bring the firefighters to Pittsburgh.
Tristan?
Is that firing range audible from beyond the campus, beyond the campus?
Yes,
Yes.
decibel wise, it's okay. We meet the decibel range, but it's like, hearing the airplane flying overhead,
Yeah.
your neighbor's doing the lawnmower going by, you do hear it, but it's just one of those things.
How often is it used?
I don't know. Heather, could you or Mike answer that question on the range?
Every day.
So it really would not be good placement for housing folks and the Agency of Human Services needs population 24/7 near a shooting range that's used every day, I would think. I mean, those are some of the limitations when you're looking at what we currently own for property and think that we can do something, and then you start looking and then we go from there. Chip?
I was just wondering if a roof over it, over the firing range, would that mitigate some of the noise, you think?
It probably would mitigate it some, but not all, because it would still be open air. Once you enclose it, if you're shooting lead, definitely with lead, you have to then start doing scrubbing of your air.
Yeah.
The lead that once you shoot and it comes out, you are exposing lead into the atmosphere, and then downrange, when it does hit, it also releases some.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
So I hope this helps the committee in terms of visually having a view of the academy and the use of those buildings, and it's used by two entities, our fire service and our public safety arena for that. So I'm gonna open it. So basically the 750,000 is, BGS is seeing some of these infrastructure needs getting to the point in the buildings that we really need to start addressing them. And in terms of the use of the buildings, particularly the West Cottage, that is still to be determined, but what the 750,000 is really to determine what is needed for water, what is needed for sewer, what is needed for heating system, and what is needed in the building, West Cottage to begin with.
Yes.
And then you hope to have that back by next year?
If not sooner, so we can start design on it, but yes, I mean, again, we're not looking to make major renovations, it's really to correct the deferred maintenance. And obviously, if it's 24 million with the heat plant and everything else, way above major maintenance.
So the 750 would not get you into doing anything for construction.
Correct.
It would only be into design documents, so that next year we would have a better idea what are some of the options and possibilities. And that's where the council and the Division of Fire, the Department of Public Safety with the fire safety could weigh in.
Yes.
Governance committee could weigh in.
Yes.
Is that the thinking?
Yes.
Do that? Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather and Michael. I don't know who wants to go. If your thoughts or comments or concerns, or if this makes sense. So Heather, I think, whoops, who wants to
ahead,
go?
Mike.
Heather.
Thank you, Mike. Again, for the record, Heather Simons, Executive Director, Vermont Criminal Justice Council. And I really appreciate this lead up and review of the 750 because the bigger picture is what I thought I would cover with this committee so that you could have eyes on the present and the future with regards to governance planning. And the council's position, certainly my position, is that we would be making requests, programmatic requests, and we have it essentially narrowed down into 3 categories, which is safety, capacity, and accessibility, and safety first. So it's no secret to BGS. They have eyes on this as well, but that gym floor is just the way that it was built. There's no padding underneath it. And so in the summertime, it's really slippery. I think that that's a liability issue and it's difficult to manage. We'll also can get in the way of how we use the gym, but that's one example of like safety issues that we want to keep on our radar moving forward. And that back parking lot that abuts that unused land, that's where we do our what's called EVOC training, or it's the driving portion of the academy. And it's very small. It's too dangerous to meet the needs of driving for law enforcement, and any agency that wants to meet the basic level of requirements has to leave the state to do that. And that's very burdensome. That land actually might be something that you might want to consider in the future. A driving pad is really critical. And again, high in the priorities for us in terms of driving, and certainly as high as the firing range. And along with capacity and safety, they tend to go hand in hand with us. We certainly learned through COVID that we need more space between people. So we can't shut down, and we don't cancel any academies. So having that, the dining area a little bit bigger would be very helpful for us. Right now, it's pretty tight in there. And as we start managing our accessibility and capacity, meaning we're trying to figure out how we're going to run possibly 2 academies at the same time. We understand that the law enforcement shortage is so burdened right now that it'll take years. Even if they fill every class, it's still going to take 5, 6, 7 years to fill up the agencies. And so we want to be able to have more opportunity for rolling academies, and space is needed for that. We also are designated, I understand, from the town to be a shelter, and were for cold weather a couple of weeks ago. That's gonna, the governance committees, we're gonna pick that up and do a lot of planning around what that looks like. As well, we're also designated as a landing spot for some kind of command if needed in that part of the state, if there's any kind of either natural disaster or anything else. And so that I think has been on the table for some time, certainly was discussed a while ago before I started. Those all fall into things I think we ought to consider while we do this. And the capacity portion of this really has to do with our legislative mandates around alternative paths for certification. And I can't tell if some.
He just moves his hand. You get used to it.
Sorry.
Right.
And I don't need to drill this down into great detail, other than to say, with vision on these, on the study for how to bring us up to speed with the basics like knob and tube, et cetera. We have a plan, if resource, to accommodate the needs for law enforcement presently and in the future. And taking a look at the work that we're doing, which is assessment of the job in general, we see a lot more training needs, things like, well, we'll probably likely be looking at the necessity for a pool. And I was very surprised to hear how little training law enforcement gets in water rescue, but then they do a fair amount of it in this state. And that it just makes things harder when you have to find other facilities and reserve and find things like, accessible and open pools for things like recruits or even in-service training. There are childcare, this one's for me. Childcare is on everyone's mind. I have been advised many times that one of the hardest things about the academy for some people and the timing in their life is leaving their children. It wouldn't, and that has inspired a lot of discussion around community academies and regional academies, all of which we should look at. My hope is that we would put on the table a daycare at the academy someday. I'm just going to slide that one in just this one time, and then I'll leave it alone. But the reason I bring this up is because competency-based training for law enforcement right now is really particular around what the level of skill is required. There is a lot of content that can be done remotely. We're not equipped to do that. That's technology that we need, and that means that we need to also have the space to be able to plan for running remote classroom. While we do that, it's equally important that we have in-person training. That means scenarios. So with COVID and the style of work that we have and the weather in Vermont, the committee's also going to talk about a real need for a pavilion, which could also serve as an outside classroom, a place to space in a way that we could separate people in the summer if we needed to run classes, and we know that having some fresh air also mitigates some of the spreading of germs. We're hosting more events. We plan to host a lot more. And it was tough. There was I think the first responder memorial that was this fall, it just absolutely poured. And the staff can hack it. It's the families I feel bad for. So if we're going to be a space that has a lot of events, and we are, as we expand our mission, so has our audience. So there's a lot for us to do that expands past getting the electric up to date and the boiler, which I'm equally excited about a boiler. It's I don't want to talk about one, but I do pretty regularly, and it's not working. Or it's a pretty well. I would like you should come and visit when the boiler is going.
Then you can do the
summer
driving.
when it's going full blast.
Yes. Then you can get into a police car and do some driving around the pad.
That's
Just
how we
ask
get our air conditioning. Yeah.
Just ask Betsy Ann Raz. She did it one time. We took a visit there, and she had a great time.
We'd like you to come and visit, and I would like for you to see see the training and see the scenarios and see what we mean when we say to refer to one of the other training buildings. That's a scenario building. It's basically a concrete floor and some movable walls, but that's it. It's not, don't envision it like an office. I think that, the canines train in there as well. Mm-hmm. But there's plenty to do there. And from our perspective, the question really is, are we, is this the spot that we want to bring 21st century competency-based training too, and how do we do that and be multifunctional for the rest of the state, either remotely or in person. And don't forget, we also do all the in-service training there. So our classroom, we have 3 classrooms. One of them we shouldn't call a classroom. The other one's okay. And the big one is used for the recruits most of the time. There's no question that we need more and we would fill it. But I know everybody says that, but we just want you to have eyes on where we're headed and how seriously we're taking combining law enforcement transformation into competency-based learning. And that includes community. So we want a lot more community events there, and that requires heat.
So Heather, we do
Consider.
it. So we do have a couple questions here. Wayne and then Chip, or then John.
No, we're talking a lot about space. Of course, we're going to have a planning process going on, but given the needs of the driving facility and the other needs, are we looking at future for land acquisition to make this all work, or is there enough land on that property now to accommodate all the future needs?
And you're asking me, right?
Yes.
Well, you go first. You know about it. But you seem to have a good handle on, how much space would be needed for the driving facility.
Well, I mean, so we make do, like many people. We're figuring it out. We can't run 2 academies at the same time right now. That's where we're headed, and we're getting it done. That's not a very brave answer.
It's just, I think, Heather, what you've been saying is there's a lot of requirements. The requirements for law enforcement training has been evolving over the last couple, 3-4 years. And there are specific types of training and time and the numbers of folks needing to come through that the buildings and the layout are probably limiting what you're being required to do.
Yeah, I think so.
Because there's been a lot of legislative action and requirements of the council to provide different types of training. And in order to do that, you need the appropriate space, whatever that may be. It could be an open land, or it could be a building, classrooms, it could be a variety of things. And that's what you're saying, is that the world has changed from when we were using this academy in a certain way 20 years ago, but now there's different needs and requirements.
Yeah, and we're full. I mean, make no mistake, there's not time where we're not asked to fill any of those rooms. And we also let other agencies use it on the weekends and evenings. Like, I think they have like a driving motorcycle class from DMV. The community would like to spend more time there. There used to be, pre-COVID, there was a senior dinner that we hosted for Pittsford. We're bringing that back. The community is asked to be more involved in the academy, and we want that. And we certainly, what we're trying to do really is to create an environment where we can help people change the way that they think about law enforcement. And that includes new Americans and young people. And that property is beautiful. If you've been there, it looks a little like the Waterbury complex and Hogwarts all at the same time. But with all of that comes some concerns that I have. Like, we don't have any cameras on that property, not one, and that makes me nervous. But I also, I come from corrections, so I know that I may have a little more baggage than everyone else, but cameras, I think, are going to be critical. And it should be a place that, we have proper protocols and procedures to host. And I don't want to turn anyone away because we don't have a way to supervise what's going on in the property. And they, our recruits brought back trunk or treat in October, and it was absolutely adorable to see all those young people trick or treating, going from recruit to recruit out of their cars. And they were like, that goes a long way. And Chair Emmons, I know you've known me long enough that I'm recruiting all the time. So I don't care if you're 6 years old. We're recruiting, and we're going to take that time to see what you're doing in 10 years. But though I know that wasn't the agenda item for today, we just want you to know that we are working hard to participate in every opportunity we have to not just catch up to the rest of the country, but to get ahead. And the work that's coming through the International Association of Directors of Training Standards is going to allow for us to do a full assessment of all law enforcement job description. And what that means is Vermont will be the only, it's the only state in the country that has one academy. That's a very big deal. That means that we can standardize and direct from one place. And through this process that we've already started, we would, in a few years, be internationally certified, which is also unprecedented. And that means our curriculum could go to Maine, or it could go to Colombia, it could go to any country. And with that, I think that's going to go a long way with Vermont's Police Academy being transparent and open and healthy, which is the other goal, is that we want to build an education environment that's creating resilience and support.
Heather, we do have some more questions here. So Chip, John, and then Tristan.
I just wanted to comment about the wiring. I mean, knob wiring could be, and Mike might be able to comment on it. It is a fire safety issue that needs to be addressed right away. And the other piece that I had, over the years, as Chair Emmons was saying, police training has become more about learning statutes, the Vermont statutes annotated, and learning more about the legal process than it has been in the past. And I think that would generate a need for classroom space. So those two pieces are what strikes me as a need that, and the boiler, of course, but as a need that really needs to be addressed.
John, and then Tristan.
First, knob and tube isn't inherently dangerous. It's dangerous when it's overloaded or when it's buried in cellulose.
Right. Or when the rodents get to it.
No, that's probably more of an issue with modern wiring than it is. Anyway, you triggered the first part of my question.
Okay.
Heather's wish list was pretty extensive and had a lot of zeros after it. At what level and when are projects vetted against a wish list? Not this project or any project.
Okay, and her wish list is separate than BGS's wish list because, although we tried to bring them together as we're doing in the main building in the West Cottage, that they would be putting forth, as Heather said, her own capital bill to address those needs. Or, if they needed, or we're looking to build a new building, whether it's for training or anything else, that would be coming to them, sort of like what we do with others. So we'd look at replacement of Newport Courthouse. That's one that BGS is chasing, because that meets our needs similar to Pittsburgh. However, in the capital bill, you'll see judiciary is looking for Barry, because that's their highest need. So it's one of those things is where it ends up in the capital bill, whose need it is. But then we do work together.
You're looking at the fundamental infrastructure
Yes.
of the facility.
That's what we own. They have the rest of it.
Okay.
So John, what could happen is the council and Mike DeRocher as well with the governance committee, they could have made a request to the budgeting process of the administration back in August and September that they want to add space to the driving pad, or they wanted to bring in a facility for water training. They would present that to the administration's budget proposal, and then when the governor works on, and the Secretary of the Administration and Deputy Secretary, and all work together, that could make the list to be in the governor's capital budget, or it couldn't. They could come to us and make a request that was not in the governor's budget. We could put something in.
So they come in from different directions.
Correct. Tristan?
Is childcare a issue in this area more than just the academy? If we looked at that, could we look at serving the area?
Oh, God. That's like our bill. It's like the bill up there. You asking Heather?
Yeah.
Is childcare, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'll just maybe make it a simpler question. Is childcare an issue in this area, not just on site, to your knowledge?
Shift work is where it's a challenge, and it's, a residential academy. So that's what becomes difficult for families, particularly single parents.
Heather, I think the question was more, you're looking at the folks who are at the academy and taking the classes, need some childcare. I think the question was broader than that, or folks of families in Pittsburgh and the surrounding area needing childcare, that if we did provide childcare at the facility for the attendees, could be broadened to the greater community of Pittsburgh and the surrounding towns. Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair.
Yep. Sorry, yes. I can't prove this, but I believe so. And I actually don't know of any area that's not needing childcare.
Thank you.
So we're starting to wind down here, and I have to leave by 11:45 for a meeting. So, Michael, do you want to weigh in on anything before we finish up here?
No, I'm pretty much good there. I think Heather articulated the concerns very well. I just want to express our appreciation for the support of the committee on this governance committee, because that really has enhanced communication down there at the facility. And as Heather indicated, we're open if anybody wants to come down and visit the academy. We certainly can give folks a tour of the place and so forth. And also a deep appreciation for support on our new burn building. It is a state-of-the-art burn building, and the fire service has been able to be trained for modern scenarios because of this new burn building. And when you do take a tour, if you wish, there's quite a large contrast between the new burn building and our own one. The old one looks like a shed. So it's just a stark difference. Heather and I, Heather is the vice chair of the governance committee, which is real nice, right? We have a very good fire service, law enforcement balance down there. The committee is well balanced, and we all get along good, and try to steer this in the right direction to make the campus down there. We're not looking at some glorified campus down here. We just want something that'll be safe, meet our needs, and something that can be used for years. And it is our only fire service training academy in the state as well. There, I don't have much more to add than that. I did send Philip a email on the use. I'll just go over it just real quick. Since the East Cottage was opened at the end of January 2022, we've had 648 overnight stays. 210 of those were law enforcement, and 438 were fire service. And there's also been a couple other opportunities where the Vermont State Police could have used the dorms for pre-basic sessions, but because the way those classes worked out, they didn't need the space. So that's 650 roughly overnight stays that otherwise would never have occurred there. And I would also add that this summer we did an incident command class that was free to the fire service. And we were able to bring 30 first responders to this facility for a week and run this National Fire Academy class at no cost. We never would have been able to do that without this East Cottage. So Heather and I's vision and BGS's as well we're all in alignment there, and I certainly support Joe and BGS in their efforts to. There's just some immediate stuff there that I think you all recognize we need to address there. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here today.
Well, thank you both, Michael and Heather.
Thank you.
For the committee, when we get to markup with the 750,000, I'm seeing the 750,000 and the work that BGS needs to do in terms of the infrastructure of this academy. The physical infrastructure could also be connected with the future needs of the academy, because you can't figure out your water system, your sewer system, your heating system without knowing what the future may hold for expansion or needs. So this is something we'll have to think about when we do markup for the 750,000. We could do a variety of things. We could just keep it very simple. It's not gonna be bad, Joe. You're looking at me like, oh God, what is she doing now? But we could propose language. We could put in language that BGS needs to consult with the Governance Commission to talk about the future use that both the Fire Safety Academy and the Police Academy are seeing, so that can be incorporated within the planning process and come back with some possible scenarios. So we could do that as a committee, just put in some language that there needs to be some coordination and consultation or whatever. Because we know that, and I've said this many times, we can have all the policy we want, but if we don't address that when we're doing infrastructure and buildings, your buildings is going to determine your policy.
Yeah.
And that could be really different than what we really want. So here's an opportunity to bring these two views together. Because this is the 750,000 is really the first step. And I agree with what BGS is saying. I mean, you can't let these buildings and the infrastructure deteriorate to a point that you really have an issue. But this feeds into the longer term plan of the academy in the space. So we could do some language to that effect. Just putting out some thoughts for the committee when we do markup. Wayne?
This is cash fund money, and you told us that you can get this done in a year. So this is one that will have to be banked.
If we have the cash. That's a different conversation. Yeah, that's many conversations. One place may have it and the other place may pull it. Anything else before we take a break here for lunch? If not, thank you, Heather. Thank you, Michael. We really appreciate your input. This is very, very helpful. We do have a brand new institutions committee, so I think it was very informative in terms of how some of legislative policy gets carried out on the ground and who's responsible for carrying out the legislative requests and recommendations and requirements. So
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for the committee, let's go to lunch, back at 12:30. We've been working, I suggested, we're back at 1 today. We can do that. I did suggest to Phil to see if we could on Thursdays, because there's so many competing situations occurring, that we work till noon and then come back at 1 o'clock for that.
There's some really good socks on this side of the room. I recommend this.
Some good socks.
Yeah,